So I hope everybody's enjoying their holiday season. Of course, we know the year's winding down, which means we're going to see a whole bunch of these boring ass top 10 sneaker of the year lists popping up. You're probably seeing them all over your YouTube feed, which I want to just be the first person to say that nobody cares about your personal top 10 sneaker of the year list. Now, what everybody does care about though is whenever Complex posts their big top 10 sneakers of the year list, it seems to always create a whole bunch of controversy, given the fact that you could say Complex is probably the leader here in this sneaker media space. Whatever list they drop, of course, is going to ruffle a whole bunch of feathers. Now, taking a look at this year's top 10 sneakers of the year list from Complex, I remember looking back at it. They did a pretty good job, I would say, as far as like dropping a mainstream list that, would make everybody happy. But of course, given how big they are, no one's ever going to be satisfied. And it seems like Complex, they're kind of feeling some of the smoke, in which they've actually went back surprisingly and revised the list. Well, I shouldn't say surprisingly, because I believe they've done this in the past, but what they've done is they've went together and removed some pairs from the list, added some new pairs, moved some positions around. So what I want to do today is take a look here at their list, and kind of give my little criticism, my little critiques or whatever. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what's going on, everybody? You're watching John Alexander TV. Salute to you for tuning in. Make sure you guys smash the like button down below. So here we go. Complex's revised top 10 sneaker of the year list, which they say the list looks different from the one we presented at the infamous sneaker of the year panel at ComplexCon in Vegas. We assume that the people in the crowd at the panel are among the most dedicated in our audience, and we want to taste to somewhat reflect the audiences. So in that room, they tell us what's off on the shoe. So essentially what they're trying to say here is that they go based off of audience feedback. Some pairs may bump up and down on the list, and some pairs actually didn't even release at that time, which is why we now have the revised list. And I see a little sneak peek here as we got the Futura SB Dunk Low, which I want to say upon the original list was up a little bit more. I want to say up a few more spots than this one. So it's kind of crazy. I wonder why they bumped this one down to number 10. As far as the backstory, it was their legendary design, legendary designer, and I feel like it all came together to make a great pair. But according to Complex, they had to bump this one down to number 10, I guess, to make room for some other pairs, to hit the list. So it'll be interesting to see what changes we have and what pairs make the list here. Number 9, you have the Wu-Tang Dunk High. Now, when it comes to this pair right here, I would say you could probably put this one in the same category as those Terror Squad Air Force Ones. A pair that's legendary. It's got so much story behind it. Once extremely rare, highly coveted. You could call this one definitely like a grail sneaker, if that term even still exists here in this new sneaker space. But as far as the drop, there was a lot of advertising, a lot of campaign behind this release right here. But I would say as far as the impact, I don't want to come across as a hater right here, but I just want to say that these joints really didn't hit like I feel like a lot of OGs thought they would. I feel like the OGs, as I just mentioned, went crazy for these. But as far as with the younger generation, I'm not really sure if the storytelling really hit like that for them, which is why I feel like, having these on the list is great. Number 9, I think, is a fair space to put these in. Although, like, crazy to think that if this was like, 10 years ago or something like that, these would have been a number 1. But here in 2024, you got these Dunks Grail Wu-Tang joints coming in at number 9, which I feel like is a fair spot, which they definitely deserve to make that list right here. And if you guys missed out on these, resale isn't too crazy. And I feel like this is one that maybe people, will go back on over time. Now, coming in at number 8, we got the Nigel Jordan 4 RM. And while I haven't came up with my own list, of course, nobody cares about your personal list. I thought these would have been a lot higher. I feel like with the Jordan 4 RM, at the end of the day, these are Team Jordan, and Nigel made these joints hype, man. Like, let's just be real. Sometimes it does take that cosign, to really make people gravitate towards a shoe. And I feel like with the Bike Air, the storytelling and everything like that, it was a nice touch. Glad to see these on the list. Feel like maybe on my personal list, especially this green color, like they just look hard with a pair of like white high socks, pair of shorts. I just feel like it's a vibe. I think my list, these would have been a little higher than 8, but just glad to see them on here. Now, of course, we got the first New Balance pair, which I believe based off Complex's previous top 10, this was the only New Balance appearance that we saw on the list. And of course, it's very fitting to see Action Bronson here, and as well as a 1906 R, which seems to kind of be like New Balance's go-to model. Of course, you bring in that Action Bronson hype, and with this Rosewater colorway, I feel like this one was a sleeper out of the three when they originally dropped, and over time kind of aged to be the best. You know what I'm saying? And it had that whole story revolving around like women's exclusive drops, which is a homage to like the OG sneakerheads back in the day. We know them women's releases were a lot more difficult to get your hands on, and sometimes being a little more rare, you know, some more bright colors, sometimes a little more coveted. You guys know how that story goes. So glad to see those make the list. Although for me personally, you know, all hype aside, I probably would have went with something different from New Balance. But that's my personal touch. We're looking at complexes. Now, of course, you know, these Kith Marvel A6, they had to make the list. I would say this would probably be this year's one of most highly anticipated collabs. I would say as far as like licensed collaborations, this was probably the biggest, most exciting one that we saw. You have all of A6 most popular models, which have been smash hits this year. And then of course you bring in that Kith Marvel hype. So what do we have here? A double collaboration here. That's kind of cool, right? So Kith Marvel, that was a good one to see. Personally, not really for me, but I understand, you know, the excitement behind Marvel and everything like that. More for like the sneaker nerds, right? Now we got number 5, the Travis Scott TRex, the all original Jordan brand silhouette. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe on Complex's original list, this one was a little bit higher. We've seen 3 colorways drop so far. I'm still a fan of the original. I feel like them joints was like the most iconic. But as far as the TRex, again, Travis Scott releases, these ones are usually so limited that I've actually never seen anybody rocking these out in the wild. But then again, I live in Key West, so what kind of hype sneakers am I going to see like that? But anytime, you know, I travel or I hit Miami or anything like that, still have yet to see these on feet. I feel like this is a sneaker you probably only going to run into people rocking these at like sneaker conventions or something like that. But as far as Travis Scott's impact here in the sneaker world, I feel like he's definitely deserving of one of his sneakers on the list. Just for me personally, as far as like more popularity and everything like that, while I do love the TRex, if it was my personal list, they would have made it. But it's just far as like a complex, most hype sneaker, I probably would have went with them like medium olive Jordan 1s or whatever they call them like that. So at number 4, we got the Bread Reimagined Jordan 4s. Now this one, I feel like these are definitely one of the best Jordan retros as far as these reimagined pairs. It seems like they usually get a lot of hate, but I feel like with this one, Jordan Brand definitely did these right, upgrading them from like the suede, nubuck, durabuck finish, whatever you want to call it, to the leather finish, gave it a more premium look. We've also seen Jordan Brand, you know, dabble in some bread kind of leather versions back in the day. I think some of those rare air pairs kind of gave off a similar vibe to this if you guys were around back then. So I feel like these were like a natural transition. Definitely a great looking sneaker. And when will we ever see a Bread for, you know, get a leather finish like this? This one may go down as a cult classic. So I think for this to be in the top half of the list, you know what I'm saying, was definitely fitting. I think these should make a lot of people's most definitely top 5. Even some people would probably call these sneaker of the year. Now this one is a shocker because we didn't see this one here originally on the list, and I guess it's because they didn't drop at the time. But we have the Kids of Immigrants Nike Air Max Thunder, a sneaker which I actually happen to have in my personal collection, so I could vouch for the fact that these are definitely a great shoe. You could call these under the radar, underappreciated. I feel like they fit in all of those categories. But as far as like a complex mainstream top 10 sneaker of the year list, I'm gonna just be real. I love this shoe. These would personally make my top 10 sneaker of the year list. The storytelling, everything, it all comes together. These joints are vibrant, they pop. But on a mainstream level, I'm just gonna say that nobody is really, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but on a mainstream level, people aren't checking for these. Like most people don't even know that this sneaker exists. And as far as the Air Max Thunder, just on a casual level, I feel like Nike dropped the ball on that shoe. Like them joints are hot. They should have had these like everywhere, Foot Locker, all the retail partners, but instead they decided to like, you know, just drop them through sneakers, kind of keep the first few releases limited, women's exclusive drops. And I feel like a dope shoe is being underappreciated. The Kids of Immigrants pairs go crazy. I prefer the purple over the orange pair, which I feel like is great to make the list. But as far as the impact, I would feel just like on a casual level, most people aren't rocking with these. But I might have to say those would probably be my sneaker of the year, just personally. Number 2, Black Cement 3. See, this is where they lost me. I know this is a classic, great sneaker, but I feel like we just see this shoe too much. Like, I get it, iconic shoe and everything like that, but just for me, it doesn't excite me through all of the re-releases and everything like that. I just like, you know, I'm sorry, I don't want to disrespect this shoe because I know so many people love it, but just based off the like quality control issues and everything like that, I feel like it got to bump it down a few notches. And while I understand, for this to make the top 10 sneaker of the year list, just for me, for all the reasons I mentioned, not coming in at number 2. I'm sorry. So what could be at number 1? Oh yeah, of course, the Adidas AE1. So yeah, man, I think this is a cool one to see on the list. For me, not my sneaker of the year, but I do respect the fact that Complex went with a brand new silhouette. Although the Adidas AE1 seems to like be really hot on the internet, I would seem to say that I probably don't see too many people rocking these casually. As far as like a basketball sneaker performance wise, not really seeing too many people rocking these on the court as either. But I still love them. Personally, I gravitated towards the AE1 from the first release, the With Love colorway. Also tried out a pair of AE1 lows. So I love the design. I appreciate the fact that it's a new model. I feel like the design language definitely resembles a lot of stuff that we're familiar with from Yeezy. So let me stop hating. These are definitely deserving of the list, but would they make my number 1? Nah. But then again, that's just subjective and everybody's going to have their own opinions. But overall, I feel like Complex did a very solid job. Just right off the top of my head, if I had to name a pair which didn't make the list, that's a favorite of mine, I'm going to go with any of the ALD New Balance 860 V2s, just because the New Balance 860 V2 happens to be my favorite sneaker of the moment. And I just love like every ALD collaboration that we've seen so far. So much that I even pre-ordered a pair, which I can't wait to get, top of next year, something like that. So what do you guys think about this Complex list? Let me know what y'all think down below.